The opening day matchup is set. Yamamoto for the Dodgers, and then Shōta Imanaga for the Cubs. That's in Japan. So we're going to talk about what that means to the Cubs ace from last year, what he hopes to accomplish, and the opportunity to go back home. Seiya Suzuki isn't in a battle for a roster spot, but his performance will affect the roster. I'm going to get into that as well, and what the Cubs are doing now as they get one step closer to that matchup with the Dodgers in Japan. So like, subscribe, thumbs up. Let's get this thing started. Obviously, not in the home studio today, but you guys know I'm not going to let you down. Here's your show. Let's get this thing started. Go Cubs. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillespie at Broadcaster Mick, and it is great to talk Cubs with you guys today. Follow me on the socials. Some of you guys do, and I hope many of you guys will. Come find me on X and the rest of the places at Broadcaster Mick. And love talking Cubs baseball with you. And I know we're an international brand now, man. You guys are from all over the world, and I appreciate every single one of you for being here and talking about Cubs baseball. All right, let's get into the crux of today's show. Shōta Imanaga ready to return to Japan. He's going to get that first start for the Cubs, and he earned it. What a season in his debut for the Cubs, 15-3 last year, that 2.91 ERA. It was so magical watching him pitch, the elegance that he displays on the mound, trying to figure out, what's it going to look like in the Tokyo Dome when Imanaga's in there. And we kind of wondered last year, how he was going to translate into Major League Baseball coming from Japan, known as a fly ball pitcher, where there are going to be a lot of balls leaving the park. And all we saw was a guy that just kept getting better and better and better. Our friend Patrick Mooney wrote a great piece in The Athletic. You guys should check it out. Dansby Swanson in there calls him a showman. And I love that. I think that's one of the things about Shōta Imanaga that makes him so impressive. Last time out, he looked great for the Cubs. You can see him getting locked in. And obviously, this is a dream scenario for the 31-year-old sophomore year in Major League Baseball. He was a 30-year-old rookie, right? But, he was someone that came in ready to kind of take care of expectations and be one of the Cubs' best pitchers, right? And he's a guy that last season we saw him really kind of rely on that four-seam fastball that he threw over 50% of the time. And then the slow curve, that he threw some. I mean, he just seemed to really have an ability not only to throw pitches, but to kind of have a feel of what those pitches were that he needed to throw and not try to overdo it. Hey, I got all these different pitches I can throw, but you know what? I'm just going to do the things that I need to do to help get outs and help my team win. And the Cubs did that last year, 23-6 in the starts that he had. And, you talk about this team, if it wouldn't have been for Imanaga, and it was kind of that same role that Justin Steele had the day before, the Cubs would have been a horrible team. I mean, they would have ended up way less than the annual 83-79 record that they have, right? So going back to Japan, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's exciting to kind of see him get that opportunity. Those two games in the middle of March are so electric. And I think that they're saying he's about on an 80 pitch count, that this is one of those games where you're going to see the best of him. Now, the other player going back to Japan is Seiya Suzuki. And he has been, I think, really good for the Cubs. Defensively, up and down, but offensively, when he's been healthy, he's been so good, right? But an interesting concept here that I read in Cubby's Crib, and I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what, man, these guys make a great point. They're saying that Seiya's ability to play center field could factor into Gage Workman versus Vidal Brujan battle for the final roster spot. Now, when you start looking at this battle, right, Gage Workman is a Rule 5 draft pick that the Cubs took from the Tigers. And they've given up a couple of their prospects that were on the 40-man roster to keep him, right? And maybe they did the math and they were like, look, we're not going to be able to keep Alexander Canario. We're not going to be able to keep Luis Vasquez. We don't really care about Michael Arias, so we're going to let those three guys go for nothing. Even though you just spent all that money and time developing those guys, and you even traded Chris Bryant for one of them, and we're going to keep Gage Workman. If you send Gage Workman back and you kept him on the roster when you didn't keep those guys, I mean, what does that tell you about the internal planning here? I feel like you almost have to keep Gage Workman. He's also a utility plan, a backup plan for Matt Shaw if Shaw isn't able to hold down that third base spot. But Shaw and Workman, you're talking about two guys that haven't had any major league experience, right? Well, the Vidal Brujan situation, who has had a really good spring, he's played the game, just aggressively, gets his uniform dirty, does everything that you want to see a guy do. We know he's limited on talent, but he can play a ton of positions. He can play everywhere. And the Cubs traded to get him from the Marlins, when they sent Matt Mervis that direction. So does it matter that much if you gave up Matt Mervis for Brujan? Maybe not today, but if Mervis turns out to be a pretty good player, are you really going to want to give up Brujan and let him walk, right? He gives you versatility. You know that you can rely on him, but he's just not a great hitter. He's okay. And, he's not a star player. He's a strictly a utility guy. So according to Cubby's Crib, where does Seiya Suzuki factor in? Well, you're not going to be able to put Brujan in the minors. He's out of minor league options. And if you don't make a trade with the Tigers to get the rights to Workman and he doesn't make the major league roster, he goes back and he ends up back with the Tigers. And they may be looking at it right now going, hey, we're going to get this guy back because he's not going to make the team. And they may be really happy about that. I remember the Cubs had a guy named Randy Wolf who Rule 5 and then eventually came back, and he was a really good pitcher for the Cubs. One of the best changeups I can ever remember seeing, right? So what do the Cubs do? Well, if Seiya Suzuki can play center field, maybe you don't need Brujan anymore because now you got Suzuki to fill in for Pete Crow Armstrong. If Suzuki could play that center field spot good enough, and would you rely on him to be a center fielder on your team and not have Brujan who can play center? That's the question. Then you'd have Workman who can play shortstop or third base. And if Matt Shaw isn't able to live up to his prospect billing, maybe you wouldn't worry about it as much because you would have Workman, who's a switch hitter. His body to me looks a little bit more geared towards third base. And, it's interesting when you kind of look at it and go, okay, you know what? Suzuki is going to keep getting some opportunities in the outfield to play center. And if he can live up to them, then, we'll see what happens. Cubs were off yesterday. Today they take on Kansas City. It's a night game at Sloan Park. Then they play the White Sox and Glendale. Then they got the Mariners, then the Giants. And all of a sudden, middle of next week, you're flying out to Japan to start getting ready for that matchup. So you've got a few days left to try to get that roster down, but you're not quite there yet. It's interesting to see how things go. But I'll tell you what, it's been fun watching the Cubs win. I mean, no one minds, even though there's spring training games, to see a team that just continues to win and find a way to win games. And the Cubs have been certainly like that. I mean, you hope that momentum carries on to those games against the Dodgers. Although it's crazy how when the games start counting, things start changing, as far as everything from spring training to the big leagues. But look, we're going to keep watching the roster battles. We talked about David Robertson yesterday. Would the Cubs be willing to go out and add with some payroll, a guy that's 39 years old but knows how to pitch to make that bullpen better? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a possibility there. The Cubs have some money under the cap right now that they could use for a situation like that, but are they going to do that? And I think that's what we'll see. They may be trying to gear up to sign Kyle Tucker if they want to at the end of the year, go after the free agent markets, or maybe they're just waiting for the deadline to see kind of what's going on in that aspect. But all in all, it's getting to the point where we're about to have some games and that count here really soon, opening day. And to me, it's just like, what is this team ready to do? What are they ready to do? A story came out yesterday that the Cubs had the second largest increase in payroll in 2024. That's not the same vibe that we're getting in 2025. And the crazy thing is that they added more money, but that money really didn't factor into success. They had the exact same record, right? So I think they've been a little bit more reluctant to go out and spend. And, with the Shohei Ohtani contract being back-ended, it looks like he's getting paid $2 million or whatever it is. So even though the Dodgers are spending $1 billion on payroll, it's not on this year's book. So anyway, guys, like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out with me. I know the show's not in our home studio today. We had to do it on the road. We'll be back tomorrow. But we'll be watching the Cubs. We'll be talking about the Cubs, and we appreciate all of you guys for hanging out and being here. And again, thank you, and go Cubs, man. We'll see what happens between now and tomorrow. And if something breaks, we'll jump on here. We'll talk about it. See ya.